having me. Always a pleasure.
Thanks. Before we actually go on into the whole webinar series, we wanted to share just a few little information about what's happening right now in the Agile TD world. So as you might know, I'm going to share my screen right now. As you might know, I think I'm sharing the wrong slide. Hang on, doing it again. There we go. We are in full preparation mode for Agile Testing Days. This is the 15th anniversary of Agile Testing Days in November this year. So it's going to be huge. And one part of the whole thing is our virtual pass. So with the virtual pass, we'll have access to all the live streamed sessions, which are all the talks, all the keynotes, by the way, also the keynote from Sam here. And on top of that, you'll get access to the so-called conference in a conference, which is another 60 online talks by expert speakers. All that adds up to a huge amount of knowledge sharing footage, and you'll have access to that way longer after the conference has ended. So you won't have to watch while you're attending live or online ATD. So check it out. It's a great thing, and we hope you like it. Let me know if you have questions, either here or in Slack. So that was that. And just a little brief introduction to the tool. So this is Crowdcast, and you see on the right-hand side already our chat. We're going to post a few resources in there. Also, you'll find our code of conduct. In short, it means we do not tolerate any misbehavior also in online events. If anything like this is visible for us, you'll be thrown out without any notice, just so you know. So you better behave, people. I'm sure you will. And then on the right-hand side, below the chat symbol, you see the little question mark. If you have a question, please just go in this feature and post it right in there, or upvote for one that's already been posted by somebody else. In the end, we will take a few minutes to answer the one or the most pressing questions. If the conversation, however, is being taken further, we would go over to Slack, or you can just contact Sam via our Slack workspace. Thank you, Sam, for that opportunity. If you have more questions or, need to talk about it a little bit more in detail. And then below, you'll find the polls. So if you click on the poll sign, Sam has created these polls for us. There are a few little questions in there that might be of interest. The first one is, how much do you work with code? And the second one is, how helpful do you think would the skill of reading code be in your current role? So please go in there and make an honest answer, please. All right, so that's all you need to know for the Crowdcast tool right now. One more thing, the recording is available right after this webinar. You can come back anytime and watch in your archive any webinar you have attended, show it to your colleagues, and rewatch if you want, how often you like. And now finally to Sam. So Sam has been in the Agile TD bubble for not too long. I think 2 or 3 years. I think we were in contact when you first started off. And we are very thankful because he's an awesome community person, always there to help. So beyond this webinar and this topic, if you have any questions, he's always there for you. Jump in the Slack zone and you'll see what I mean. Sam has a huge background as a database developer. Amongst other things, he's an Oracle Ace Pro, and he just recently moved into the whole software testing sphere, which we are very, very happy about because now he's here with us. And he, as you will see in a few minutes, amazes us with his stage presence and very different style of presentation. So no pressure here, Sam. It's awesome, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So I think for now, that's it from my side. I'm going to be back on later to do the Q&A live. And so Sam, I'm wishing you all the best. You're going to do great. And I'm going to toggle myself and be back later. Have fun, everybody. See you later.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, I really enjoy being here. And I need to share a little bit of context for this talk because this talk was specifically done for Agile Testing Days Open Air. And for the people who don't know Open Air, it's an amazing conference which happens on a beach next to a lake. And I would like you to imagine for a moment to be there, and I will do the same and be there again in a moment. Oh, I missed the lake, really. But that is the setting in which the talk is happening. And so I at least want to bring it a little bit into the virtual world here. So let me share my screen. And let's see that I push all the right buttons, hopefully. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that looks good. You should be able to see my screen here. Yeah. Okay. Yes, so I already started talking, and the people who know me a little bit might be expecting that I have some co-speakers. And indeed, I have some company always around, especially when being at home. And some of them are particularly interested in this topic. So yes, I know you here, Kevin.
Oh, hey, hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a developer and I like coding.
I know, Kevin, and don't worry, I can understand that you sneaked in. I mean, that terrific beach and the beautiful lake alone.
Wait, what lake?
You know, the one right behind us? Can I remove the hat? And you don't scream, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay. Really, Kevin, what's your problem?
I'm scared of water, especially waterfall.
Oh my gosh, Kevin. Well, is it okay if I very safely place you over there? You will not get closer to water, I promise.
Okay, if you say so.
Okay, maybe then I can finally start introducing myself. I'm Samuel Nitsche, and I have been a software developer for 20 years. And just recently, I switched sides and am now working as a quality hero at Quality Minds. Well, the official term is quality engineering consultant.
Blah, 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 blah.
What the?
Blah.
Kevin, you've ruined my joke.
This is boring. I want to hear about coding, about awesome 10 times code writing techniques.
Well, about the topic, I think you mixed something up here. Okay, what's happening today? A lot of disturbance, but let me open the door.
Hello, I am Heino.
Okay, hi Heino, nice to meet you here and have a bit more audience. What's up?
I am here
Boring.
to learn about code.
Oh, you too? Let's learn about coding.
Reading.
Wait, what?
Yes, Heino is right. This session is about code reading, Kevin.
Okay, why?
Because it's an important topic.
Especially when you want to learn code.
Ha! When you want to learn how to code, you just start a side project. There are so many tutorials, and you should really just experiment and try out things. You will fail a lot, and it will be hard and terrible and annoying, but that's how it works. You just need to keep trying.
Okay, just try it, right? Just try it is not always a very effective approach, especially when you don't get enough guidance. I mean, I learned it exactly as you just described it. I started to code very early and mostly via trial and error. And I thought that everyone should learn it that way, with all the frustration included. But a couple of years ago, I finished my trainer's license so I could officially train Fachinformatiker apprentices. And I saw some of my trainees struggle with this just try it approach, even when guided by me. It didn't really click and some got pretty frustrated. And it was 1.5 years ago when I saw a talk and stumbled over a book by Feline Hermans, The Programmer's Brain, which focuses on code reading techniques. And there's especially one sentence in the book that stuck with me. If you can learn French, you can learn Python. And scientific studies show that programming languages have a lot in common with natural languages. That means that we can use the same techniques that work well for learning a foreign language. And I wonder, Kevin, do you know a foreign language?
Yes, sure. I speak German so well that I even got a German accent in my English.
Okay, I wonder, how did you learn it? Did you just try it? Or did you experiment? Oh, how would I probably say hi to somebody? Maybe Fruzzle Buzzle. Didn't work. How sad. Let's try again.
I guess it worked a bit differently.
And that's exactly the reason why I want to talk about code reading as an alternative approach today. Because I tried some of these approaches with my trainees and it really helped. I really wish I had known about it earlier. Using code reading techniques consciously myself also helped me to learn the basics of Python very quickly, and it helped me recently to get into a completely new code base at a new client very fast. And then there's also Tamara. Maybe some of you know her. She's a co-worker and friend who asked me a while back if I could mentor her with learning Python. And she struggled with getting into coding. She felt constantly stuck with the video courses and tutorials she did and was pretty frustrated about her progress. And I suggested to try a code reading approach instead. And so far, we just had a couple of sessions, but it already brought back the joy for her. And I really think that code reading is an often underestimated and overlooked skill for all kinds of tech workers.
You won't be boring, right?
Yes, I'll try not to. I know a lot of speaking and monologue. Why don't we start with a little demonstration about our brain? And this is for you now, folks. I will show you 21 characters for a very short amount of time. And I want you to remember as many as possible. Are you ready? Then go. Okay, that was not so easy, right? We will do the same experiment again. I will show you 21 characters and you will try to remember them. Ready? Okay. Anyone who can remember it? I think that was a lot easier. This is because now your working memory could use information that was stored in your long-term memory. It used something that's called chunking. So let's have a look at the first example. There is no chunking possible, which means all the information needs to be provided by the short-term memory, which is not possible. Now, when we look at the second example, we have at least 3 big chunks: print, hello, and world. And we might also need to remember the brackets as an extra chunk or as 2 extra chunks. But even for people who are not experienced coders, it is relatively easy to read and remember that. Why do I say that? Because For experienced coders, there is only one chunk. Your brain recognizes that this is a print hello world statement, which is stored in your long-term memory. So it is very easy to recognize and remember that one chunk, because you only have to remember one thing. Having long-term memory code chunks will not only help us read code more quickly, some chunking is really necessary to even get started with understanding code. Okay, let's have a look at our first code example for today. And if you want to practice code reading, I highly recommend to take a piece of code, print it out, and work with pencils and text markers, especially in the beginning. So when you read this, you will probably understand individual words. Import, for example, is an English word, and so is requests. And you might also recognize that there is something that looks like a URL. But overall, for code novices, this will look very strange because it is not English. It is Python, a separate language with separate syntactic rules. So one of the first things we need to do when working with code is to learn about its elements and learn to differentiate them. In Python, there are 4 different elements: language, method, static value, and variable. How can we define and recognize these different elements? Let's start one by one. Language elements in Python are keywords and operators and signs that are defined by the language itself. And in Python, there are just 33 keywords. And each of the keywords is a specific instruction for what the language should do. Import, for example, means that the program should load other Python files, so-called modules, to get their functionality. And there are also keywords that consist of 2 words, for example, for, and in. That command, again, will step through a list of elements, doing something for each item of the list. Language also contains all the different operators and signs, and in Python, even the indentation matters. Here, in this case, the indentation means that the indentated line, oh, this is such a hard word for me, belongs to the for in loop and is executed for each item in the list. And when we compare this to a natural language, the operators and keywords are your most basic vocabulary. You need to understand what they mean, and it is best to memorize them so you can have some chunking. Otherwise, you will have a hard time reading code. Okay, so that's language. The next element we can define and mark are methods. Methods do something and often return a value. And in Python, they can always be recognized by a following opening bracket. So let's see, get is a method, for example, and so is raise for status, and also JSON and write. Okay, the next element are static values, and they can be recognized because they are either a number or they are enclosed in quotes. In this code, there are just 2 static values. One is our URL, and the other thing is that strange emoji and %s thing. The great thing about static values is they don't do anything. They are just that, static values. So, having defined 3 of the 4 different elements means that all the rest are variables. And variables are basically labeled elements that hold or reference a value. They can have all kinds of names and come in many different forms. And the concept of variables is sometimes described as a bottle where you fill in something and use it later. But this is, in my opinion, a bit misleading, because a variable can really be anything that has a label attached. If we look at our variable response, that might look like a bottle that gets filled with some data. The filling happens here via the assign operator, the equal sign. But we have also different variables. Our variable requests, for example, that's not just a bottle, it is a module with functionality. It also has a label attached, but it is something totally different. It has a method get we can call to load data from a URL. And to find out something about a variable, it is often helpful to physically mark all of its occurrences and visually connect them with a line. Doing that for response, we see that it also is not just a bottle, but a bottle with some methods. Okay, and when we do the same for the train variable, we see that, train is really just a very simple data holder without any methods. It's a bit like a glass holding something. Okay, so now that we defined the syntactic structure of our example code, we can start to analyze how the data flows through the code. And the visually connected variables help a lot in that regard. So let's see. First, we store some data in response that we get from a URL. This data has a JSON part, and that JSON part is used as a base for our for in loop. And for each iteration of the loop, the current element is stored in the train variable, which is then used again in some way that we don't understand yet. That's frustrating, right? But there will be a lot of things that we don't understand when reading a new language or unfamiliar code. To understand what happens in the last line, we need to look up two things. What does sysstdout_write do? Which is the write method that is part of the stdout variable that is again part of the sys module. And the other thing is, what does that strange % operator do? And I highly recommend to stop whenever you encounter big question marks during code reading. Write down what confuses you and look it up before you continue. That might feel slow in the beginning, but going on without a good understanding of what happens will not help you. Okay, let's assume that we looked that up, and in that case, we find out that sysstdout_write is a kind of print method that doesn't add a new line. The % operator is a bit more complicated. It replaces some special placeholders, for example, %s, in the string on the left with the values on the right. This is an operator. It does something. In this case, the %s in the left side static value string will be replaced with whatever value is stored in the train variable. For example, ICE1. ICE is a high-speed train in Germany. So with that information, we can now understand what this code does. It gets a list of trains from a URL in JSON format and prints that list to the console. That was quite some work, wasn't it? But I think we saw that we can use highlighting and visualization to make it easier for our brain to understand code, even unfamiliar code. But we won't be able to do that without the long-term memory information of what certain vocabulary means. So to read code effectively, we want to memorize this vocabulary. How can we memorize these things, and especially quickly, because I'm a little bit impatient? And There is a pretty simple technique for that. You take a card and you write a description or term on one side, for example, string %, and maybe a little hint for this is for Python. On the other side, you write in your own words a description and maybe even a bit of example code. And once you created a bunch of such flashcards, you can regularly use them to memorize the keywords or concepts. You read the side with the term and then try to remember the example code and definition. Okay, Kevin, what is it this time? Are you scared of flashcards?
This feels like school!
Well, school has some pretty damn effective ways of learning stuff, you know?
But it is no fun!
Okay, so you mean fun like in, I just try and fail miserably until things accidentally work out if I put enough energy and time in?
Yes, this is not the true coder's way!
Okay, maybe you got the true coder's way, but I got science. And the great thing about flashcards is that you are not limited to keywords. You can also create flashcards for concepts, for example, code patterns like factory method or strategy pattern. And you can memorize them very, very efficiently. That will help you to see even bigger chunks when reading code and get a lot quicker. So let's have a look at a new code example. And it is quite some text, and even though a lot of things are similar to the code example before, it will probably look like this for most of you. Why is that? First of all, we don't have the help of the colorization we did before, and that most IDEs provide automatically. So thank you, IDEs, you are very helpful. The second reason is the second reason that it's hard for us to read this is because we don't find a structure and we are not able to limit the input to our brains. Our brain is simply overwhelmed by the amount of unstructured information here. Now compare this piece of code with the following. This is the same code, but I added some new lines and comments. And I guess it is a lot easier to get a major understanding about what this code does, right? One of the most helpful methods to help your brain when reading code is, in my experience, to add code comments, especially when you are not familiar to the code base. They can serve as a memory aid and a summary of what you analyzed. And even if you can't change the code base yourself, with modern version control systems like Git, you can easily add your own local branch of the code that you can comment in a helpful way. Okay, our time's nearly up, but there is one very important question left. How can one get better at code reading? And I want to share two possibilities. And the first one is you could join a code reading club. Just go to codereading.club and find all the information around that format there. You can either join one existing or you could even create one. And that's what I did a couple of months ago. And the other possibility is to look for a code reading partner. And you agree on a schedule, for example, 30 minutes 3 times a week, where each of you individually reads unfamiliar code. You can use any open source framework you're interested in. You can use all the reading techniques you want. There's just one rule. You write a summary about each code reading session to each other. So that's also a very helpful way of getting better in reading code. And of course, you can find a lot more techniques in Feline's book. the programmer's brain and in her talks. And I also started to create a small spreadsheet of the different code reading techniques. And I also know that Feline is working on another book specifically about code reading. So there is a lot more to come and a lot more to find out. And especially if you join a code reading club, you will explore more in different techniques here.
Oh, wow. That looks useful. But it's a lot to remember.
You could.
Say it out loud, my friend. Oh, my own Visual Studio Code plugin. Copilot. AI.
Flashcards.
Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger now. Thank you, 3, actually.
Yeah, Heine, come over, join us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been probably really tough, right? You too. I'm talking to those two, not you, no.
Yes, of course.
No, but it's I really enjoyed it, and I think it was very valuable for most people that just start coding or just try to understand how it works. And you don't have to be an expert coder, right? It's just about having maybe the ability to understand a few more of those funny bright lines. That's what I always see, right? The colors, which amaze me. So I'm not a coder, just a little tiny bit, but it's really interesting. So I hope most people got something out of it, I'm sure. So I will just jump over to the question feature here and check out if there have been any questions. So let's see. Oh yeah. So the question that has 2 votes more is how to understand very different concepts like functional programming.
Okay. So as with all the different languages, you need to learn about the syntax first. So you need to learn how things are combined. And you can use a lot of the same techniques, but in a functional programming context, you have usually little to no variables. So you should not emphasize on the variables, which we do in other contexts. But there are some more code reading techniques. For example, what is very helpful for a functional programming setting. You can do the same as we did in the talk with variables with methods. So you take a piece of code and then you mark the different methods that are used and connect them visually in the way they flow. So which calls which methods. And in that you can also see the data flow. For more complex things, there are other techniques. For example, you could start making a state table or something. So it's often around making things more visual, making a mental model of that, or even a drawn out model of that. And every time you don't understand something, write it down and either interrupt your reading process and look it up, or because you have written it down, continue until you feel, okay, I'm really stuck now, and then get back to your list of written down things that confuse you and look them up and do research. Because otherwise the uncertainties and the strangeness just adds up and up and up.
All
I
right.
hope that answers the question a little bit.
Yeah, Andrew answered Andrew, do you need any more insights? He was the one posting that. So if you do, just let us know here, or just move on to the Slack.
Yeah.
So I'm not even. Do we have? I think we do have a code reading, dedicated code reading Slack channel in the ATD zone. If
I
not,
don't
maybe
think
it's
so.
an idea to start doing that, just for people to, because it's a topic that comes up all the time. So I think
Yeah,
with you being
sure.
in the zone with us, that would be great to kind of gather the questions. So that's decided. Very good. All right. So next question by Amanda. You mentioned flashcards. Do you have any kind of decks for programming languages?
That's a tricky one.
That's
That's a
trying to
tricky
help us
one.
only doing half the work, right?
No, so the question is similar to if you learn French, you go to your teacher and tell them, "Hey, can you give me a deck of verb flashcards?" And usually the teacher will say no, because why? Every flashcard deck is different. You have different experiences, you have different backgrounds. So I would highly recommend to start creating one instead of trying to get an existing one. Because what you have is documentation about a language, for example. That is basically your language book. You can look things up there that's predefined. But the flashcards you really want to fill with your own experiences. Let me see if I just have that somewhere. I can't find it right now. I have it somewhere. That flashcard that I created for the string %, I used my very own words to describe it, because that will connect to things in my long-term memory that I already know. And that will be way more effective to learn instead of having some predefined deck of programming languages thing.
Yeah, it also
I hope that answers the question.
It reminds me of being back in school when you were trying to do a little,
I'm sorry.
note, right? And just by writing it down, you memorize it better than
Yes.
not doing it. So that might be also one thing to remember. So let's move on to the next question. What is an IDE?
Oh, I'm sorry that I didn't explain that. An IDE is an integrated development environment that is not helpful. It's the software which you use to write code. And usually it's a software that is able to automatically highlight different words based on their role. For example, all the language keywords will already be highlighted in a special color. IDEs do some things more, but that's the most helpful thing when it comes to starting to read code. And one very easy example for an IDE is Visual Studio Code. That's free, and it has plugins and stuff for, I think, nearly all programming languages. So if you want to read code and and you don't want to highlight that yourself, then take an IDE like Visual Studio Code, and then
So the name is Visual Studio Code.
Yes.
Okay, I'm just going to type this in the chat here for everybody. All right. Thank you. So the next question is from Butch. I think this is the most important question of the day. This is a question to Kevin. Why do you hate water so much?
Yeah, he explained he's especially afraid of waterfall. So I guess there is some. And
all right,
if we look at him, he also, I don't know if he would really survive being in water. So
okay. All right. And then Karen is asking if this is also available in a blog form. I know you have a website, but is that a specific blog as well available with this topic?
Like this talk? No, there is a book, but again, that book is probably not very good for novice programmers.
Okay.
So thank you for bringing this up. That is goes onto my to-do list, I guess.
To the long to-do list. All right. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that are here. I'm going to check the chat again. Yeah, I like the comment from Andrew. Thank you for this presentation. Understanding code is a bit better. No, understanding code a bit better is not a galaxy far, far away. Awesome. Yeah, I think we're done. So everybody, if you have any questions concerning code reading or you need more resources, we are now actually after this talk, I'm gonna create a dedicated Slack channel within our Agile TD Zone workspace. I'm gonna share this with you in the follow-up email. So you all get an email with a hint for the next webinar and also some resources that we collected throughout this talk. And also, of course, the link to the recording. So the recording is available in a matter of seconds after we are finished. Thank you, Sam, for this talk. I think it was very valuable. For me, it was. And I hope I know we'll see each other in November, right?
Yes, we will.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me. And I'm looking forward to talk to you people and collaborate with you in the new to be created code reading channel. All
right. So saying goodbye to everybody here, and remember the next webinar is just around the corner, but you'll get a notification from us. So have a good day and be safe. See you then.